What if the woman who smiles at you already has a ring on her finger? Most men immediately shut down the idea. They tell themselves a married woman is completely off limits emotionally. That attraction simply cannot exist there. So when subtle signals appear, they ignore them. They assume she is just being polite, friendly, or nice, and because of that, they miss what is really happening right in front of them. But here is the truth most people never say out loud. Attraction does not always follow rules. It does not care about titles, labels, or social expectations. Sometimes it appears quietly through the smallest shifts in behavior. The way she looks at you a little longer than normal. The way her voice softens when she says your name. The way she suddenly stands closer than necessary or pays attention to details about you that no one else notices. Now listen carefully. Understanding these signs does not mean acting recklessly. A Stoic man is not impulsive or desperate. He observes. He reads the situation with calm awareness. He sees what others miss, and because of that, he moves through social situations with far more control and confidence. In this video, we are going to break down the subtle behaviors that may reveal when a married woman feels drawn to you, even if she would never admit it. Once you see these patterns, you will never look at certain interactions the same way again. Let's get into it. Number 1. She dresses sexier around you. Let me paint a simple picture that many men have experienced but rarely stop to analyze. You walk into a familiar place. Maybe it is a small office, gathering, a neighborhood barbecue, or a casual dinner with mutual friends. There is a married woman you know there. You have seen her many times before. Usually she dresses fairly normal, comfortable clothes, nothing that really stands out. But one evening something is different. Her hair is styled more carefully. Her outfit feels more intentional. The colors seem chosen to stand out just a little more. Maybe the dress fits slightly closer to her body. Maybe there is a new perfume you notice when she walks past you. And here is the interesting part. That shift seems to happen most noticeably on the days when she knows you will be there. Now, before we go any further, a Stoic man does not jump to wild conclusions. He observes patterns. As Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, you must look at what people do, not only what they say. Behavior often reveals more than words ever will. Let's imagine a simple example. There is a man named Daniel, 62 years old, who volunteers twice a week at a community arts center in Phoenix. One of the coordinators there is a married woman named Laura, 57. Daniel had known Laura for over a year, and her style was usually relaxed. Jeans, simple tops, practical shoes. But over time, Daniel noticed something subtle. On the days when he worked the evening shift with her, Laura appeared different. Her hair would be freshly styled. She might wear a more fitted blouse or a dress that highlighted her figure a little more. Even her makeup looked more polished. One evening, Daniel casually mentioned that he liked the color blue on her because it brought out her eyes. A week later, she showed up wearing a deep blue dress that looked carefully chosen. Was that proof of attraction? Not necessarily. But when a woman consistently puts extra effort into her appearance, specifically around one man, it is rarely random. Another example comes from Michael, 65, who often met friends at a small wine bar in San Diego. A married woman named Rachel, 53, was part of the same social circle. Michael noticed that on nights when the group gathered without him, Rachel usually wore very casual outfits. But when he joined the gathering, her style subtly changed. She would wear heels instead of flats, a dress instead of jeans, sometimes even a new fragrance that lingered when she greeted him. What matters here is not a single moment, it is repetition. When a woman invests extra effort into how she looks around you, it often signals that your presence matters to her more than she openly admits. Attraction frequently begins long before words ever appear. It shows up in preparation. The Stoics believed that wise men train themselves to notice the small signals that others ignore, not so they become arrogant or reckless, but so they remain aware of the true nature of human behavior. And appearance is one of the earliest signals. Now stay with me, because the next sign becomes even more revealing. Once you understand how her eyes behave around you, the entire interaction begins to look very different. Number 2. Her eyes undress you. Let's talk about one of the most powerful signals that almost every man underestimates. Eye contact. Most people think eye contact is just a polite part of conversation. You look at someone when they speak, you nod, you look away. Simple, ordinary, harmless. But when attraction enters the room, eye contact stops being ordinary. It changes rhythm. It becomes slower, heavier, and more deliberate. A woman who feels drawn to a man often reveals it through her eyes, long before she ever says a word. And the interesting thing is that she may not even realize she is doing it. You might notice it during a simple conversation. She looks at you while you speak, but instead of breaking eye contact quickly, the way most people do, her gaze lingers just a second longer than normal. Then maybe she glances down for a moment before looking back again. That tiny pause matters, because attraction often hides in moments that feel almost too small to mention. Sometimes the pattern becomes even clearer. Her eyes move slowly across your face, not in a rushed or distracted way, but with a quiet kind of curiosity. She studies you the way someone studies something they find interesting. This is where many men misread the situation. They assume she is simply paying attention to the conversation, but attention alone does not usually create that slow, scanning look. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that you must train your mind to see things as they truly are, not as you wish them to be. In human interaction, the truth often reveals itself through behavior that slips past conscious control. And the eyes are one of the hardest behaviors to hide. When attraction is present, the eyes often travel briefly, from your eyes to your mouth, sometimes down toward your shoulders or chest, then back to your eyes again. It happens quickly, but if you are calm and observant, you will notice the pattern. Another interesting detail is how the eye contact begins. Often she will look at you when you are not directly speaking to her. Maybe you are talking to someone else in the group. Maybe you are across the table, and when your eyes finally meet hers, she does not immediately look away. Instead, there is a small pause, almost like she got caught watching. That moment of hesitation can say a lot. It suggests that her attention was already on you before the conversation even started. Now here is something important. A Stoic man does not react impulsively to signals like this. He does not assume too much, and he certainly does not become arrogant about it. He simply notices. He remains composed, aware, and grounded, because the goal is not to chase every signal. The goal is to understand human behavior clearly, without being blinded by emotion or fantasy. And once you begin paying attention to eye contact, you will notice something fascinating. The eyes rarely lie. A person may control their words. They may hide their intentions behind polite conversation, but their gaze often reveals what their mind is quietly feeling. Stay with me, because the next sign moves from subtle observation to something much more physical. And once you see how distance changes between two people, the entire dynamic becomes impossible to ignore. Number 3. She stands too close. Now let's move from something subtle like eye contact to something much more physical: distance. Human beings have invisible boundaries around their bodies. Psychologists often call it personal space. Most people protect that space automatically. When someone stands too close, we instinctively step back, but attraction changes that rule. When a woman feels drawn to a man, that invisible boundary often shrinks. She begins standing closer than necessary sometimes, without even realizing it. Think about how conversations normally happen between people who are not emotionally or physically interested in each other. There is usually a comfortable gap, maybe 2 or 3 feet, enough distance to feel polite and neutral. But when attraction appears, that distance quietly disappears. Let me give you an example. There is a man named Robert, 64, who attends a weekly community book club in Denver. One of the members is a married woman named Karen, 58. For months, their interactions were polite but ordinary. They would chat briefly about the book selection, exchange a few opinions, and then move on. But over time, Robert noticed something unusual. Whenever they talked after meetings, Karen began standing closer than the other members did. Not dramatically closer, but just enough that Robert could notice the difference. Instead of staying a comfortable distance away, she would step slightly into his personal space while speaking. At first, Robert thought it was accidental, but then he noticed the pattern repeating. When the room was crowded, Karen often positioned herself beside him rather than across from him. When she leaned in to talk, the gap between them almost disappeared. Nothing she said was inappropriate. The conversation was still about books, travel, or everyday life, but the distance between them had changed. Another example comes from Thomas, 67, who spends time at a small golf club in Florida. A married woman named Linda, 55, often joins the same social gatherings at the clubhouse. Thomas began noticing that during casual conversations, Linda would stand unusually close when speaking to him. Sometimes their shoulders were nearly touching while they talked. If he stepped slightly to the side, she would naturally shift closer again without seeming to notice. These moments may seem small, but they are rarely random. People are extremely sensitive to personal space. We instinctively avoid entering someone's physical zone unless we feel comfortable, safe, or interested. This is why body language experts often say that proximity reveals emotional intention faster than words do. A Stoic perspective helps here as well. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that understanding people requires watching how they behave, not how they present themselves. Words can be carefully chosen, but the body often reveals what the mind tries to hide. When a woman consistently reduces physical distance around a man, it usually signals a certain level of trust, curiosity, or attraction. Now, this does not mean every close interaction carries romantic meaning. Some people simply have warmer personalities or different cultural habits. That is why a Stoic observer always looks for patterns rather than isolated moments. If she stands closer only once, it means nothing. But if it happens repeatedly, especially when she chooses to position herself near you, even when there is plenty of space elsewhere, the signal becomes harder to ignore. And stay with me here, because the next sign becomes even more revealing. When the tone of her voice changes around you, it often tells a story her words never will. Number 4. Her voice turns softer. Now let's focus on something many men hear every day, but rarely analyze carefully. Her voice. The human voice carries far more information than the actual words being spoken. Tone, pace, volume, and warmth often reveal emotional signals that language tries to hide. When attraction begins to appear, one of the most common changes is subtle but powerful. Her voice becomes softer around you. This does not mean she suddenly whispers dramatically or behaves in an obvious way. The change is usually small, but once you notice it, you begin to see the pattern. When a woman speaks to someone she feels neutral about, her voice tends to stay steady and practical. It is the voice she uses for co-workers, acquaintances, or casual conversation. But when she speaks to a man she feels curious about, the tone often shifts. Her voice may become slightly quieter, slower, warmer. There may be a softness in the way she says your name. Sometimes her sentences stretch a little longer, almost as if she wants the conversation to continue rather than end. This shift is rarely calculated. In fact, most people are completely unaware that their tone changes depending on who they are talking to. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once reminded his students that human nature reveals itself through the smallest habits of behavior. If you want to understand people clearly, you must pay attention to what they do instinctively, not only what they claim to feel. And tone of voice is one of the most instinctive signals we have. When a woman feels comfortable and emotionally engaged with a man, her voice often lowers slightly and becomes more relaxed. This happens because the body is no longer operating in a guarded or distant mode. Instead, the interaction becomes more personal. Another interesting detail appears during group conversations. Notice how she speaks when addressing the entire group. Her voice might sound normal, energetic, even loud depending on the situation. But when she turns specifically to you, the tone may soften just a little. It is almost as if the conversation becomes more private, even though you are standing in the same room with everyone else. Sometimes the softness is paired with slower speech. She pauses more. She listens carefully before responding, and when she does respond, the tone feels warmer than the one she uses with others. This change may not seem dramatic, but emotional signals rarely are. Attraction often reveals itself through these quiet adjustments in behavior. Now here is the Stoic perspective that matters most. A wise man notices these signals without becoming carried away by them. Awareness is not the same as assumption. You observe calmly, you stay grounded. You understand that human behavior is complex, and a single signal never tells the full story. But when several signals begin appearing together, the pattern becomes harder to ignore. If you are enjoying content that explores human psychology, attraction, dynamics, and Stoic principles of emotional control at this level, consider joining the membership of this channel. Members get access to deeper breakdowns of social behavior, mindset training, and practical insights that help you move through life with far more awareness and composure. Because the goal is never manipulation. The goal is understanding. And once you understand how subtle signals work, the next one becomes even more interesting. Stay with me, because the way playful teasing appears in conversation can reveal far more attraction than polite words ever could. Number 5. Playful flirting with you. Now let's talk about a signal that often appears once a certain level of comfort already exists. Playful teasing. This is one of the most misunderstood behaviors men observe. Many men assume teasing is just casual friendliness. But in reality, playful teasing is one of the oldest forms of flirting in human interaction. It allows attraction to exist without being openly stated. When a married woman begins teasing a man in a light and playful way, she creates a small emotional space where both people can interact with a little tension, a little humor, and just enough ambiguity to keep everything socially acceptable. Think about how most ordinary conversations work. They are polite and predictable. People exchange information, discuss everyday topics, and keep the interaction neutral. But teasing changes the energy. Suddenly, the conversation becomes more personal, more alive. Let me give you an example. There is a man named Stephen, 63, who spends a few mornings each week at a small cafe in Austin. Over time, he became familiar with several regular customers, including a married woman named Angela, 55. At first, their conversations were simple, small talk about coffee weather and local news, nothing unusual. But gradually, Angela began interacting with Stephen differently than she did with the other customers. If Stephen arrived a few minutes late, she would smile and say something like, "Look who finally decided to show up today." The tone was playful, not critical. When he ordered the same drink 2 days in a row, she might laugh and say, "You really are predictable, aren't you?" The teasing was light, friendly, but it was also something she rarely did with anyone else in the cafe. Stephen noticed another pattern. When Angela teased him, she often watched his reaction closely. If he smiled or joked back, she seemed even more engaged in the conversation. This kind of playful exchange creates a small emotional spark. Another example comes from David, 66, who participates in a weekly hiking group in Northern California. One of the members, a married woman named Melissa, 52, often joked with David in ways she did not with the rest of the group. During one hike, David mentioned he preferred slower trails because he liked enjoying the scenery. Melissa laughed and replied, "That's just your excuse for not keeping up with the rest of us." The comment made everyone smile, but the interesting part was the way she looked at David afterward. There was a playful challenge in her expression, as if inviting him into a private joke. Moments like this are subtle, but they matter. Playful teasing allows a woman to create emotional closeness without openly admitting attraction. It lowers social risk while still building a connection. A Stoic observer notices this without becoming carried away. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to study human behavior calmly and objectively. When people feel drawn to someone, their behavior naturally becomes more animated, more curious, and more playful. Teasing is often one of the first signs of that shift. Now, teasing alone does not mean romantic interest. Some people simply have humorous personalities. But when playful teasing appears alongside other signals we have already discussed, changes in appearance, longer eye contact, closer physical distance, and a softer voice, the pattern becomes much more interesting. And stay with me, because the next sign moves from playful words to something even more revealing. When physical touch begins to appear, even in ways that seem accidental, the message behind the behavior becomes much harder to ignore. Number 6. She touches you accidentally. Now we arrive at one of the clearest signals in human interaction: physical touch. Touch is powerful because it crosses a boundary. Words can stay polite. Eye contact can be explained away. Standing close can still be accidental, but physical contact is different. It requires a decision, even when that decision is subtle. And that is why attraction often begins revealing itself through touches that appear completely innocent. A light tap on the arm during a joke, a brief touch on the shoulder while passing by, fingers brushing yours while handing you something. Most of the time, the moment happens so quickly that many men ignore it. They assume it was random or meaningless. But human behavior rarely works that way. When a woman feels drawn to a man, she often begins testing small forms of contact. Not boldly, not dramatically, but in ways that allow the interaction to remain socially acceptable. This is where the word accidental becomes interesting. Because these touches are rarely completely accidental, they are usually brief, casual, easy to dismiss, but they often repeat over time. During conversation, she may laugh and lightly touch your arm for a second. When walking past you, her hand may brush your shoulder as she moves through the room. When you both reach for something at the same time, she might let the moment linger just a little longer than necessary. Each individual moment seems harmless, but patterns reveal meaning. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that wise observers study behavior carefully because actions reveal the true movements of the mind. People may hide their intentions with careful words, but the body often acts more honestly than the voice. Touch is one of those honest signals. Physical contact requires a level of comfort that does not exist between strangers. When a woman allows that comfort to appear around one specific man, it often suggests that she feels emotionally relaxed in his presence. Another interesting detail appears in the timing of these touches. They often happen during moments of laughter or emotional warmth. The body naturally moves closer when people feel positive energy in a conversation. Attraction simply intensifies that instinct. So when she laughs and her hand briefly lands on your arm, the touch becomes part of the emotional rhythm of the interaction. And the interesting part is that she may quickly remove her hand afterward, almost as if the moment passed without importance. But you remember it, because physical contact leaves a stronger impression than words ever do. A Stoic man notices these signals without becoming reactive or arrogant about them. He understands that attraction can exist in subtle forms, and he remains calm enough to observe it without chasing it. The goal is awareness, not assumption, because one accidental touch may mean nothing. But repeated touches, especially when they happen naturally in conversation and seem to occur only around you, often reveal something deeper beneath the surface. And if you think touch is revealing, the next sign becomes even more interesting. Because sometimes attraction does not just appear through touch or eye contact. Sometimes it appears through something even more deliberate. Attention. Stay with me, because when a woman begins giving one man a kind of attention she does not give anyone else in the room, the message becomes much harder to misunderstand. Number 7. She gives you secret attention. Now here is a signal that many men completely overlook, because it does not always happen in obvious ways. It is what we might call secret attention. This is when a woman gives one man a level of focus and awareness that she does not give to anyone else around her. And the interesting part is that she often tries to keep it subtle. Attraction does not always express itself loudly. In fact, when a woman is married, it often appears in quieter forms, not open flirting, not dramatic behavior. Instead, it shows up through small investments of attention that most people would never notice. Let me give you a simple example. There is a man named Richard, 65, who attends a weekly cooking class in Chicago. One of the regular participants is a married woman named Susan, 56. The class usually has about 15 people, and the environment is relaxed and social. Richard noticed something curious over time. Whenever the instructor explained a new recipe, Susan often glanced toward Richard first, almost as if checking his reaction before continuing with the lesson. If a joke was made in the room, she would laugh along with everyone else, but her eyes would often shift toward him immediately afterward. It was subtle. No one else in the room seemed to notice it, but the pattern repeated again and again. When people spoke in the group discussion, Susan paid polite attention to everyone. Yet when Richard shared a comment, she listened differently. She leaned slightly closer. Her expression became more focused, almost like the conversation mattered a little more. Another example comes from a man named George, 68, who volunteers at a local museum in Boston. One of the coordinators there is a married woman named Patricia, 54. George noticed that during busy events, Patricia interacted with dozens of people throughout the evening, but somehow she always found small moments to reconnect with him. She might pass by and quietly ask if he needed anything, or she would bring him a cup of coffee without being asked. If the room became crowded, she would often check in with him first, before moving on to other volunteers. None of these actions were dramatic, but together they formed a pattern of attention that felt different from the way she treated everyone else. This kind of behavior reveals something important about human attraction. Attention is one of the most valuable resources people give each other. When someone repeatedly directs their focus toward a specific person, it often means that person occupies space in their thoughts. A Stoic observer understands this principle very well. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we should train ourselves to see the small movements of human behavior clearly, because people reveal their interests not through grand declarations, but through repeated choices about where they place their time, their energy, and their attention. Secret attention often appears through tiny details. She remembers things you mentioned weeks ago. She notices when you enter the room. Her eyes drift toward you during conversations, even when she is speaking to someone else. And perhaps the most revealing part is that she may try to hide it. Sometimes when you catch her looking, she quickly turns her attention somewhere else, almost as if she hopes no one noticed. But the pattern is still there. And once you learn to see it, you realize that attraction often speaks quietly. Stay with me, because the next sign becomes even more revealing. When a woman's body language begins opening toward you again and again, the message behind her behavior becomes much harder to ignore. Number 8. Her body opens to you. Now let's talk about one of the most revealing signals in human interaction: body orientation. Most people think attraction is communicated through big gestures or obvious flirting, but in reality, the human body often reveals interest long before words ever do. And one of the clearest indicators is the direction the body naturally faces. When someone feels neutral toward a person, their body language tends to stay closed or divided. Their feet may point somewhere else. Their shoulders might turn partially away. Their posture remains guarded or distracted. But when attraction begins to appear, something very subtle changes. Her body starts opening toward you. This can happen in small ways. Her shoulders face you directly when you speak. Her torso turns toward you, even if the conversation includes other people. Sometimes even her feet quietly point in your direction without her realizing it. Body language experts often note that the feet reveal attention before anything else. The body naturally points toward what the mind finds interesting, and attraction amplifies that instinct. You might notice it in a group conversation. Several people are standing together, but her posture seems oriented toward you more than anyone else. Even when someone else is speaking, her body remains angled slightly in your direction. That posture is rarely intentional. It is simply how the human body responds when curiosity or attraction is present. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to study human behavior calmly and honestly. He believed that if you want to understand people, you must observe what they do naturally, not what they claim to feel. Body language is one of those natural expressions. When a woman feels comfortable and interested in a man, her posture often becomes more open. Her arms relax instead of crossing tightly. Her shoulders soften. Sometimes she leans slightly forward while listening, as if the conversation itself is pulling her closer. Even her breathing rhythm may appear calmer and more relaxed. All of these signals suggest emotional ease. Another interesting detail is mirroring. When attraction exists between two people, they often begin mirroring each other's posture without realizing it. If you lean slightly against a table, she may shift her position in a similar way. If you tilt your head while listening, she may do something similar moments later. This is not imitation in a conscious sense. It is a subconscious reflection of connection. Psychologists often call it behavioral synchronization. In simpler terms, the body begins moving in harmony with someone it feels comfortable around. And once again, a Stoic man does not rush to conclusions when he sees these signals. He simply observes them. One open posture might mean nothing, but repeated patterns of body orientation, relaxed posture, and unconscious mirroring begin to tell a story about emotional engagement. Attraction rarely announces itself loudly. Instead, it reveals itself through quiet alignment between two people, through posture, through distance, through the direction of attention. And when the body keeps opening towards someone again and again, it often means that person has quietly become the center of the interaction. Stay with me, because the next sign becomes even more revealing. When a woman begins creating small private moments with you, even in crowded spaces, the meaning behind her behavior becomes much harder to misunderstand. Number 9. She creates private moments. Now, here is a signal that often reveals attraction in a much more deliberate way. She begins creating small private moments with you. Not dramatic situations, not obvious invitations, just quiet moments where the two of you somehow end up talking alone, even when other people are around. At first glance, these moments might look completely normal, but if they start happening repeatedly, they often reveal something deeper. You see, attraction naturally pushes people to seek connection. And when open flirting is not possible, especially when a woman is married, that connection often appears in subtle forms. Private moments become the safe space. Let me give you an example. There is a man named Anthony, 64, who attends a weekly wine tasting group in Napa Valley. The group usually gathers with 10 or 12 people, and the conversations are lively and social. One of the regular attendees is a married woman named Claire, 56. Anthony noticed something interesting after a few weeks. Whenever the group conversation became crowded or loud, Claire often found a reason to speak with him separately. Sometimes she would step slightly aside and ask his opinion about the wine. Other times she would ask him about a story he had mentioned earlier. None of it looked unusual from the outside, but the pattern kept repeating. In a room full of people, she consistently created small pockets of conversation where the two of them interacted alone for a minute or two. Another example comes from Mark, 67, who volunteers at a local charity event in Atlanta. A married woman named Natalie, 54, often works the same events. During busy evenings with dozens of volunteers, Natalie frequently found ways to pull Mark into brief, one-on-one conversations. Sometimes she would say something simple like, "Can I ask you something quickly?" and then guide the conversation a few steps away from the group. Other times, she would walk beside him while they completed small tasks together, extending the moment longer than necessary. These private interactions were short, casual, easy to overlook, but they happened often. This is important because attention combined with privacy creates a different emotional atmosphere. When two people step slightly away from a crowd, even for a few seconds, becomes more personal. The energy shifts, conversations become more relaxed. Eye contact lasts longer, voices soften, and the connection between two people becomes more noticeable. A Stoic observer pays close attention to these patterns. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that understanding human behavior requires patience and observation. People rarely announce their intentions clearly. Instead, they reveal themselves through repeated choices about where they place their time and attention. Creating private moments is one of those choices. When a woman repeatedly finds ways to speak with you away from others, it often means she values the interaction more than the casual group dynamic. It is not necessarily a declaration of attraction, but it is rarely meaningless, because people make time for what interests them. And when someone consistently creates small spaces where the two of you connect privately, the signal becomes much harder to ignore. Now stay with me, because the final sign brings everything together. It is not just about eye contact, touch, or conversation anymore. It is about the invisible tension that begins to exist between two people when attraction is quietly present. Number 10. The hidden sexual tension. Now we arrive at the final signal, and in many ways it is the most difficult to explain and the easiest to feel. Hidden sexual tension. Unlike the earlier signs, this one is not just about a single behavior. It is the combination of everything we have discussed so far. The eye contact that lingers, the closer distance, the softer voice, the playful teasing, the brief touches, the private moments. When those signals begin appearing together, something new starts forming between two people, an atmosphere. You may notice it during ordinary conversations. The room might be full of people, yet the interaction between the two of you feels slightly different from everything else happening around you. The pauses in conversation feel heavier. Eye contact lasts just a little longer. Even simple jokes carry an undertone that feels more personal than casual. It is not obvious. In fact, most of the time, both people pretend not to notice it, but the tension is there. Human attraction rarely appears as a loud declaration. More often, it exists in this quiet space between two people, where curiosity, awareness, and restraint are all present at the same time. A Stoic perspective is especially important here. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about observing human nature without becoming controlled by it. He believed that emotions and impulses are natural, but wisdom comes from maintaining clarity and discipline in the presence of those impulses. Hidden tension is exactly the kind of moment where that discipline matters, because tension can easily confuse a person who lacks awareness. Some men immediately chase it, misreading the situation and losing their composure. Others ignore it completely because they feel uncomfortable acknowledging what they sense. But a Stoic man does something different. He notices it calmly. He understands that attraction can exist even when no one speaks about it. He also understands that recognizing a signal does not mean acting recklessly. The strength lies in awareness, not reaction. When two people share this kind of tension, the conversation often becomes slightly slower. Both individuals may pause more before speaking. Eye contact carries more weight. Even silence can feel meaningful rather than awkward. It is as if both people are aware of something beneath the surface, but choose to keep the interaction controlled. In many ways, this final sign brings together the entire picture of human attraction. It is rarely one signal alone that reveals interest. It is the pattern created by many small behaviors over time. Appearance, attention, distance, voice, touch, and shared moments slowly build an emotional current between two people. And when that current becomes strong enough, it often shows itself through this quiet but unmistakable tension. The Stoics believed that life becomes clearer when we learn to observe human behavior honestly and without illusion. Attraction is simply another part of that human nature. Understanding it does not mean exploiting it. It means seeing the world as it truly is, remaining calm in the presence of emotion, and carrying yourself with awareness and self-control. In this video, we explored the subtle signals that may reveal when a married woman feels drawn to you. From the way she dresses differently around you, to the lingering eye contact, the playful teasing, the small touches, and the quiet moments she creates just to talk with you. Each of these behaviors may seem small on their own, but together they can reveal patterns of attention, curiosity, and attraction that most men completely overlook. But remember, the Stoic lesson here is not about chasing every signal. It is about awareness. A disciplined man observes human behavior, clearly understands the dynamics around him, and keeps his composure no matter what he notices. If you want to explore deeper lessons about female psychology, masculine presence, and Stoic self-mastery, consider joining the membership of this channel, where we go much further into these ideas. And if you found value in this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next lesson. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.